Ray and I are thrilled to be here and introduce Allan, such accomplished athlete, but not just that, but really so philanthropic and generous, and especially with the undeserved youth. Thank you for what you do. Allan Houston is the new, I'm going to read it because I cannot remember all of these accomplishments and things you've done. Is the New York Knicks Vice President of Player Leadership and Development, and all-around powerhouse in the sports industry. A consummate athlete, Allan is a two-time NBA All-Star with a 12-year playing tenure with the Detroit Pistons and New York Knicks, and was a member of the gold medal winning U.S. men's basketball team at the 2000 Summer Olympics. Allan's impact extends beyond the court through the Allan Houston Legacy Foundation and the FISLL Project, which serves underserved youth, families, and communities nationwide throughout its strategic partnerships, coaching clinics, fatherhood, and family programming. He received the President's Council on Service and Engagement Award from the Obama administration and earned his Bachelor of Arts and African American Studies from the University of Tennessee. Allan had supported local youth organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club and Kids in Crisis, and extended to surrounding communities in Stamford and New York and across the country. Please join me in welcoming Allan Houston to the stage.
I'm up?
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to introduce Jon Ledecky. Jon Ledecky, like Allan, has a tremendous accomplishment. So he was lucky enough to grow up in Greenwich, went to Greenwich High School, and then he founded U.S. Products in 1994, and it was the fastest growing company in the Fortune 500, and he made a lot of money. Don't laugh at this. This is living the American dream. He lived the American dream, and then he bought the Washington Capitals of the National Hockey League, and had an interest in the Washington Wizards, and then he went to become the co-owner of the Islanders. And, you know, so in a tremendous, he lived the American dream. And we think that that's all really impressive and so on. But to us, his greatest accomplishment came later. We live in such a privileged neighborhood, such a privileged way. There are so many role models for me in this group. There's so many people who raise their children well, who are lucky enough to have two parents who raise them well, role models, go to good schools, come out well equipped, and so on. To be in a community like we're in, we are incredibly privileged and lucky to be in that kind of a situation. And both Allan and Jon went beyond that, which is also a population that Barbara is dealing with. And so Jon started the foundation that's dedicated to the education of inner city kids in Boston, New York, and Washington. So to me, he's lived the life's journey. He's lived the American life and the American dream, and he's been able to give it back. And so to me, these two guys are real heroes in the whole arc of life. And I really thank them. Like I say, thank so many people in this community who are role models, but I particularly thank these guys to remembering and dealing with some of those who were not blessed that way we have been blessed. So thank you, and where's John? Okay, hey John. Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless. Let's get a picture with you giving him the award. Bob.
Okay. Barbara?
John. Okay, let them take it.
And John? Okay. Let's get you in here. Okay.
Thanks, guys. Come on, stay there, Robert.
Sit there. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Ray Dalio. I have 3 heroes at your table. Ray Dalio, Mario Gabelli, and Mrs. Peter Malkin. Who happens to be married to Mr. Peter Malkin. And those of you who heard my speech at the Greenwich High School commencement know that I would not be standing here today without the Malkin family, because on my first day in Greenwich, I was walking a dog at Central Middle School where we lived, and Mrs. Malkin rolled her station wagon over with her daughter Cynthia in the front seat and said, "Excuse me, are you new in town?" Clairvoyant, how did she do that? How did she know that? She said, "I know every basset hound in Greenwich and I've never seen your dog." And she asked for my phone number, and she introduced me to her son, Scott Malkin, and 50 years later, we were able to purchase the New York Islanders, and my life changed the day I met Mr. and Mrs. Peter Malkin. Thank you so much. And it goes without saying that Mr. and Mrs. Malkin have been devoted citizens of Greenwich for many decades and have done so much to improve the lives of so many in Greenwich. Everywhere you go in Greenwich, you can see the imprint of what they've done. And their work here at the Greenwich Historical Society and their support of it is so meaningful to all the people. And it was great to hear that when I came for the original meeting on this, Mr. and Mrs. Malkin, to hear how grateful the Greenwich Historical Society has been to you for many years. So thank you again for your service to Greenwich and to the Historical Society. Allan Houston, I have to stand up and I'm still not as tall as Allan Houston, but I'm going to sit down here and have a conversation with him for a few minutes, and then we're going to auction off some great items. And Allan is going to be part of the auctioned off situation. So hopefully you can see us. Again, maybe I should stand, but I'll sit. So, great introduction by the Dalios about Allan. He was raised in Louisville. His dad, Wade, legendary basketball coach. You played for him at the University of Tennessee. Great journey for him. Your mom built a family-owned transportation business. So in essence, you came from great parentage. We're talking about the role of parents in the lives of these great athletes. What are some of the lessons your parents taught you as a kid?
Well, first of all, in keeping with that answer, one answer I would say is appreciation. And I want to extend a hand of appreciation for all the coaches and all the leaders who got their award just now. So my wife of 29 years, and many of you here know my wife. She is the heartbeat and the control center of our home. We have 7 amazing children, all who have grown up in Greenwich. So when I think about honoring coaches, when I think about honoring leaders, and I think about the wonderful introduction Barbara you gave and Ray gave, thank you so much for that. I'm just appreciative I'm just appreciative of what I came from, what I was able to experience. You know, every child is born, they didn't ask to be here, right? They come in, and now it's our job to give them the best environment, the best spirit, the best soul, the best mindset that they can have to be successful. And that is what they deserve. That's what we owe them. No matter where they come from, whether it's the west end of Louisville, Kentucky, or Greenwich, Connecticut, doesn't matter. I look at Steve Young and I look at, you know, all these amazing athletes that are up here, and people would say, wow, they came from Greenwich. But the bottom line is, no matter where you come from, you still had to fight, right? You still had to overcome, you still had to achieve, you still had to go after something, no matter what your environment was. So that was the mindset that my parents instilled in me and my two younger sisters. It was faith and values. Every day was an opportunity to reinforce, to reintroduce the values that they stood for. I always saw them working hard and working to build our family and the community up. Coaching was not just about winning games. It was about how can I transform the lives of these young men and women. And then they went from there to, as my mother was an entrepreneur. My mother was the financial aid director at the University of Louisville. My father was the first. In 1962, speaking of history in the making, in 1962, my father was one of the first 3 black scholarship basketball players at the University of Louisville. And thank you. Then he became the first black assistant coach. And then in 1989, he became the first black head coach in Southeastern Conference history. And I was fortunate enough to look at basketball, look at sports. And again, in keeping with the theme of history in the making, sports is one of the greatest metaphors for life, right? I think during COVID, during these most recent course of events, it has saved our children because it has taught them how to fight, it has taught them how to compete, it has taught them how to communicate, it has taught them to learn not only win in the game, but win in life, and how to define winning in life. And so when I think about what I learned from my parents, it was that entire perspective. And all I can do is hope to instill those things in not only my children, but the children that we work with every day.
So thank you, Allan. That's a great answer because it brings together the coaching, it brings together the dedication and determination of your parents. And it's interesting how we go through life and we meet people along the way who can influence you in ways big and small. And I think it's fascinating when we had a chance to chat that your mom and your family had a next door neighbor named Cassius Clay in Louisville, Kentucky. Can you describe that great champion to us from the perspective of being little Allan Houston, looking up to this guy and what he was doing with his life?
So you already know John was a point guard, he too, right? He's like a great facilitator. Often when I get a chance to speak to people, and young people in particular, I don't assume they know Allan Houston or the Knicks or the history, but they've heard of Muhammad Ali. And I say, you know, I grew up two doors down from Muhammad Ali. That's kind of how I start, you know, my background. And they're like, wow. And it's just to say that, right? Just to say that, I just get this feeling of heritage, of pride, of just the magnitude of that street, Grand Avenue. And my mother she likes to do this, right? She likes to quiz people and say, here's a trivia question for you. Name 2 gold medalists that grew up on 2 doors down from each other on Grand Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky. Who's gonna know that? So, my grandmother, as the story goes, knew the Clay family, was instrumental on helping Mrs. Clay get the house 3303, and we were 3306 Grand Avenue. I love hearing the stories of Muhammad Ali, Cassius, then Muhammad Ali coming back to Grand Avenue. He would come knock on the door. So I have a picture of him holding me when I was 2 years old. Happened to be my birthday. And I tell people he came by for my birthday, but it wasn't. He didn't come by for my birthday. He just came by. You know, he just came and just loved. He had a lot of he was proud of being from Louisville. And, you know, I have so many stories. So when I was a rookie, when I got drafted by the Pistons, I was at a bar mitzvah. And I saw him, and he was doing his, you know, he'd like to do these tricks for people, right? He was always, even at that time, even though you could understand what he was saying and he could understand what he was saying, you had to really kind of focus. But you know, he would always ask about my mother. He asked me if I had a girlfriend. You know, he was just love people. And if I had to think of one word for Ali, it was love, right? It was love. It was love that he embodied. It was love that he gave every single person. He gave every person dignity. And when you think about what he sacrificed at that time, think about social media. Think about the sacrifices in social justice that we're all, you know, looking at now, and what the magnitude of he did in that moment. And he will always be the greatest athlete ever to live to me.
Amen. We agree. So, stud basketball player in high school.
I don't know if I would say stud.
Okay. Star in college. Big top draft pick for the Detroit Pistons, which people may forget because they think of you as Mr. Nick. What happened? How did you get from the Pistons to the Knicks? What was that journey all about? And then of course the next question is, you come to this area and you think about where you're going to live. But let's take the first part first, which is, how do you get to the Knicks?
Wow, that's a. Whew. You tested me because this could take the whole night. But you know, played 4 years in college, which was I really appreciated. Got drafted the 11th pick. I was drafted number 11. The 10th pick was a guy named Lindsey Hunter who came from Jackson State University, or HBCU, and we became friendly right away. When we walked in the door, we were kind of positioned to be the next backcourt behind Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, two Hall of Fame players. If anybody knows the history of the Chicago Bulls' ascent to their 6 championships, they had to go through the Detroit Pistons. I got to sit under the tutelage of Joe Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, how they played against Michael Jordan, how they introduced the physical play. And fortunately, they just didn't talk about it. They actually did it to me every day in practice. And learned so much about being a young man, being a professional, you know, and I think that that's really what drove me. Is the foundation that my father laid in me was great, but you can't experience it until you experience something in life. It's like fatherhood or husbandhood, right? You can hear about it and people can tell you about it, but until you go through it, it's no experience like going through it. So that was my you know, that was a strong foundation for me. So my 3rd year, I had a good year. I was a free agent. Didn't plan on coming to New York. I met my wife, you know, in Detroit. Family friends introduced us, and so we can say we were arranged, and I'm okay with that. I believe in that, okay? Just so everyone, I'm okay with arranged marriages, okay? I'm a product of one. And when we met, you know, I just didn't I planned on making Detroit home. You know, everybody thought that. And 2 weeks into free agency, I thought Reggie Miller was going to come to New York, and I was going to go to maybe stay in Detroit or go to Indiana. That's really what I thought. Indiana was an hour and a half from Louisville, and that was my plan. And that's when you know that you don't know what's going to happen in life. You just have to be prepared. And New York, I came to New York, and the first place that Ernie Grunfeld and Dave Checkers took me was where? Greenwich, Connecticut. So I literally, this is a true story. I rode around in this limo and riding around by Lionel Helmsley's estate, and I'm like, where am I? I'm like, what is this? Is this a real place, you know? And it just really was pretty overwhelming. Then I go down and in the city, and they have like this billboard of me like in Calvin Klein underwear, and I'm like, it was really. And the thing about it is, like, the assistant general manager at the time was a good friend of mine, Ed Tapscott. So Ed Tapscott did his homework. Ed Tapscott realized that Allan Houston had never actually been recruited. His father, he knew that he was going to play for his father in college. He didn't go through the whole recruiting process other than the one recruiting trip that Shaquille O'Neal came to the University of Louisville, and I took my visit that time because I wanted Shaquille O'Neal to come to the University of Louisville. Didn't work. I didn't do my job. But being valued, of course, New York came with an offer that was substantially bigger than the Pistons, but in my value system, it wasn't about the money. And I can honestly say that to this day. It wasn't about the money the more money that I would have made in New York. It was about how the Knicks valued me and saw me as a part of their championship trajectory. That was really what. The other thing that I think is important for our young people, as we're talking about how we're helping our young people grow and develop, is a lot of people thought that I really wouldn't accept the challenge of playing in New York. And, Al, he's kind of a laid-back personality. But the thing that drove me was this. If you're going to have this short window, why not take a chance at maximizing your impact? Max out. And I think that's really what I try to tell our young people is don't back down from any challenge, because you don't know if you'll get that opportunity again. And I didn't want to pass up on the opportunity to play on this stage. And I think that my mother always taught me that, where you're supposed to be is where you're supposed to be. God has a plan for you, and he has you in this time, in this moment for this reason. And I believe that I believe it during the whole run, and I believe it to this day. So that's why I came to New York.
Great answer. Thank you. Well, Ed Tapscott became a close associate of one Michael Jordan, as you know. And in the room tonight, we have an Olympic gold medalist who spoke earlier, Donna DiVerona. Dorothy Hamill, who lived in Greenwich, gold medalist. Allan Houston, gold medalist for the United States of America in the Olympics. Can you share with this audience your journey to the Olympic team and what it meant to represent your country in Sydney in the 2000 games?
Well, I kind of have to, I don't know if I should back into it, because my most memorable part of the Olympics, other than standing on the medal stand and being fascinated with how hard the actual medal was walking into the Olympic Stadium. And I know Donna can identify with this, is you're walking into the stadium and you all have the same uniform, and you're walking with people who you watched in the US Open, watched in golf, you watched in track and field, and you're like sitting in this green room playing cards with them, and the whole summer you're bonding with people that you didn't think you would become friends with, and you're going to these places and you're forming these relationships. And competing with them and against them during this 6-week period, I think that was probably what I valued as much as anything. But when you walk into the Olympic Stadium behind your flag with all these athletes, and you're all the same, you're all on the same team, you have the same hat, the same shoes, the same blue jacket, there's just that part, and then there's 100,000 people. It's a feeling that, you'll never get. And then when we were in Sydney, another impactful time was we went to a Aborigine community called Redfern. And if you know a little bit of history of Australia, there was a community that had been shunned. And we went and saw some of the kids. And what stuck out is, and the people were saying, these kids don't even have an aspiration to graduate from high school, right? Because they walk around and they see everything that's going around them, all the Olympics, and they see Sydney, they see all the Opera House, and they see all this, but they're in this community, and in 2000, for their experience was almost like apartheid. And so for us to go and just allow them to see someone of the same color, to say, we are here to just say you can look past where you're thinking. And I think that's really what was impactful to us as well, is that using that moment during the Olympics.
And you know, it's what's really, the audience is loving your answers, Alan. Good thing Fred Camillo doesn't have competition with you for the world of politics. You know, that's an origin story. So I want to move ahead to, of course, you had a fabulous career. You're in the Knicks front office. But going back to that point of being there at that moment, did that at all influence your thinking or inspiring your thinking in terms of your foundation work? Many people tonight came up to me and said, he was a great player, he's even a greater human being, and what he does quietly in this community and other communities that have great needs is really something. He doesn't blow his own horn, so I'm going to ask you to blow the horn a little bit here about the things that your foundation has done, because this is a very philanthropic crowd, and they should know more about what you're doing.
I go back to faith and values. I mean, it's really, you know, it was poured into me, right? I think when I think about what a young person has the capacity to aspire to. The thing about sports is so beautiful is you're put in this situation where you actually want to win, right? And I have coached and seen young people that they walk on the field, they walk on the court, and you're not quite sure if they really, really want to win, if they really want to compete. And that's disheartening. But that's the world we're in now. I think because of social media, because of the world we're in, it's sapping the motivation and desire for life from our young people. And so for me, that's really what we start with. So when you ask me at that moment, did I know about philanthropic work? It was always in me from the beginning, because it was poured into me from day one. The coaches that were up here, they're pouring these same seeds into the young people, right? So, because they know that at some point they're going to have to live life on their own. They're going to have to make decisions. Who do I hang around? Who do I marry? Where do I work? How am I going to make a difference in the workplace? All these things are life lessons and values that we have to pour into them today. And so Fizzle, which is the organization that my father and I started and my wife and I now run, basically stands for 5 basic principles, and we call these the winning principles for life. Faith. Faith is a foundation for everything, and we're not talking about just whatever religion you are. It's what do you truly believe about yourself and why you're here, and your purpose and your identity. Integrity. If you're an athlete, you have to play by the rules, right? And there's a right way to do things. Sacrifice. Everyone in here has made sacrifices. Every parent has made sacrifices. Coaches have made sacrifices. And athletes are making sacrifices. Leadership and legacy. So those are the 5 principles that we say are kind of operating system for whatever we do when we're working with young people, working with coaches. You know, Phil Jackson was a guy I really liked to sit and listen and talk to when he was with us. And one of the things I remember about talking to him is when he talked about basketball, it was never just basketball, right? Even when he talked about the triangle offense and the system, it was never about the terminology that Michael came here and he went there. It was about harmony. It was about connectedness. It was about values. So to kind of answer your question, what we try to do is really instill values in a way that's aspirational to young people, that's applicable to their life experience now, and help coaches and leaders empower them to connect to the young people in a way that's going to inspire them to move forward, because we know that we need our young people. We need them to be leaders. We need them to be okay with setting themselves apart. We need them to be okay with standing out, because it's uncomfortable now for them to have tough conversations. It's uncomfortable. So we need to empower them and equip them to do that so they can make a difference.
Well, that is a fabulous note to end what could be an hour-long conversation, but we're cutting it down to 20 minutes. And